Every product is a kind of conspiracy. Not the dramatic kind. There's no secret room. Nobody's hiding a body. It's just that somewhere in the making of any product, a few hundred people make an agreement they never say out loud. You will never see how this was built. The screws get hidden. The firmware that crashed all through development gets one last patch the week before it ships. The prototype, the ugly one, mostly plastic and hot glue, gets buried so deep that the finished thing feels like it was always going to exist. I used to take just how difficult this really is for granted, and then I started building a camera myself. Now when I pick a camera up, I see every choice, every corner that got cut, every gap between the camera someone imagined and the one they could actually afford to ship. It's all sitting there in your hands, if you know how to read it. This is the Pixii Max, a $5,000 full-frame digital rangefinder, and at its heart, a $70 hobbyist computer. A rangefinder that isn't made by Leica shouldn't sound like a big deal, but it is. Leica has had this idea to themselves for so long that the digital rangefinder stopped being a type of camera and became something more like a bloodline. But still, Pixii tried anyway. And I bought one, because I wanted them to pull it off. I bought the most expensive version they made, the literal minute it went on sale. I wanted this camera to be proof that cameras could still be strange, that a small team could make a camera with more daring than the behemoths of the industry. And that's a dangerous reason to buy anything, because at that point, you're not buying the product anymore. You're buying hope. The Pixii Max arrived as a camera, but in my mind, it had already stood for more. Then I opened the box, and expectations did not meet reality. A rangefinder has design constraints that make every rangefinder look a little like every other one. I admire the look of this camera because it doesn't try to hold desperately onto the past the way most camera manufacturers do. The OLED display on top is a key part of this camera's personality. It's always emitting this phosphorus glow, and the UI on it is clean and simple, almost reminiscent of a portable game console. Also on the top plate is a small meter, like you'd find on a film camera. The shutter speed dial is minimal, just a small red index line resting at home in the A position. The biggest and most obvious design decision is the lack of a rear display. Pixii left the shooting display out entirely. The grip on the back is brilliantly integrated. It meets the finish of the body so seamlessly that the whole back of the camera feels like one homogeneous material. I really couldn't figure out how they did it. But the design isn't perfect. The front glass element for the viewfinder sticks out from the body in a way that doesn't quite sit well with me. It makes the whole camera feel a little more fragile. There are small details around the lens mount that feel out of place, almost like someone felt they needed to add a little flourish to make the design pop. It doesn't really fit the rest of the language of this camera. There's a glossy panel in the back with status lights that cheapens the look a little bit to me. And while the matte black finish looks great, it fails when it meets the real world. It feels like the surface of a chalkboard and picks up fingernail marks and scratches far too easily. The closer you get to it, the more its reality sinks in. This is not a Leica, though it costs almost as much as one. It doesn't have 100 years of refinement infused into every screw and dial. When the camera arrived in my hands, that was the moment the remorse started. It was rougher than I expected. As soon as I put the camera to my eye, the problems began. My rangefinder was misaligned out of the box, but that alone didn't worry me. Adjusting a rangefinder isn't hard, and I'm more than willing to do that myself, so I let it slide. but the patch was low contrast compared to my Leica and hard to focus on smaller details. The digital frame lines are so bright that in a dark environment you get internal flares and ghosting lines from reflections. You can even see the adhesive border around the patch square from stray light bouncing aside. The camera can display frame lines from 35 to 90, but the 35 lines on mine are partially cut off by something internal. Digital frame lines are an incredible idea, and the implementation is admirable. It just doesn't feel premium enough for what it costs. I like the look of the top dial, but it's far too easy to knock out of auto. One accidental click and you're at a 32,000th of a second shutter speed, and the other direction, you're at a full 2 seconds. And because there is no screen, you don't find out until you review the images later. And the most important thing, this is a rangefinder. A camera with a mechanical focusing mechanism, and yet it feels surprisingly soulless. I thought about that for a while. Let this idea sit with me. I really tried to figure out why I felt that way. And it really comes down to one thing. There's no mechanical shutter. The only feedback you get from taking a photo is a weak sound file played over a small speaker. You can't feel anything. Tactility is the entire point of a rangefinder to me. You're not looking at a screen, you're focusing mechanically, and that experience should permeate the rest of the camera. Here, it just stops at the most important moment. The camera is also buggy. I'd estimate 1 in every 100 photos comes out irreparably magenta. Even in RAW, it can't be corrected. There have been several times the camera failed to turn on while displaying an error message on the top display. And that problem compounds, because the boot time is long for a camera and the battery life is extremely short. But if you leave it on, you'll eat through a battery in under 2 hours. Auto ISO will sometimes get stuck at an arbitrary high value, sometimes even 10,000, and overexpose everything. Again, no screen. You only find out when the day is over. Something I've come to realize about myself is I don't just use cameras, I sit with them. I idly take photos, review them instantly, and then snap again. That mindless loop is how I bond with a camera, how it becomes mine. Because the Pixii doesn't have a screen, it locks me out of that ritual entirely. The app doesn't rescue it either. It auto-transfers previews so low resolution that they're essentially useless. You can't even check focus on them. Then there is one of the main features of this camera, the true black and white RAW mode. Pixii claims an algorithm that derives what the Bayer filter takes away, and outputs a RAW file the way a true monochrome sensor would. But to me, it has never really felt any different from converting a RAW file in post. There is, however, something interesting about being locked in and making a deliberate, irrevocable choice to shoot in black and white. Almost $5,000, and it never really made me want to go outside. I'd pick it up, feel nothing, and reach for something else. When you strip away the feeling and the soul, cameras are really data capture devices. It matters much less what a camera's raw output looks like to me, and more what I can do with that file. Good in-camera color to me is there to make me feel confident in the moment that the photos I'm capturing are living up to what I see in my head. Since this camera has no screen, in-camera color is essentially pointless to me. I never see the image on the camera anyway, and the color is mine to shape in post. When a camera's output can let me down is when the image quality falls apart under editing, when some of the data is missing. As long as the file has enough data for me to bend to my will, I can translate my vision into reality. If you want your images to have the same feeling as mine, head over to gxace.com and pick up my Lightroom presets. However, with the Pixii Max, some data is missing. Highlights clip quickly, so you learn to underexpose. But the shadow recovery reveals how fragile these files can be. I've seen fixed pattern noise, banding from the electronic shutter, and those magenta frames that no amount of work can bring back. The files kept raising questions that the spec sheet couldn't answer, so I did the only thing I know how to do when something won't explain itself. I took it apart. Can't help taking things apart. I'm drawn to seeing how things work, and I had to know what was in this camera, how the rangefinder was constructed, how the digital frame lines were implemented, but there was a dilemma. From the outside, I couldn't tell how the camera came apart at all. No visible screws. But after years of taking apart electronics, you develop a sense for where they hide. My biggest fear was that they'd be under the rubber grip. Grips can be hard to reseat once you've stretched them and broken whatever adhesive holds them down. Hesitantly, I started to pull it up, and what I found was not what I was expecting. Not only were there no screws under it, there was no adhesives at all. The grip is over-molded, shot through a grid of holes in the rear plate of the body. That's why the back of the camera feels like one material. Fascinating. That left the top plate, no visible screws, so I defaulted to adhesive. I softened it with a heating pad and pried the top off carefully. And there they were, the screws holding the two halves of the body together. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find inside, but a suspicion I'd had since the very first time I'd opened the battery door was validated immediately. I had smelled it back then, the unmistakable scent. The internal chassis of this camera is SLA 3D printed, resin. And then the electronics. The main processor running the entire camera is an off-the-shelf system on a module, an SO Quartz compute module, a Raspberry Pi competitor with a Rockchip RK3566 system on a chip. You could buy one online for about $70. And here's where it gets interesting. The Rockchip's built-in image signal processor caps out at 12 megapixels. This is a 24 megapixel full-frame camera, so Pixii appears to have used an FPGA to bypass the SoC's internal ISP entirely and offload the image processing to another board. And they took a chip that couldn't do the job and engineered their way around its limits. This Rockchip processor means that this camera runs what is essentially a desktop class operating system. This camera runs Linux. A camera that costs as much as a Leica, running on a $70 computer, an FPGA workaround, and a resin-printed chassis. It should have made me angry. And 2 years ago it would have. I wasn't looking at a failed Leica anymore. I was looking at my own desk. A compute module you can buy online, an FPGA doing what that chip can't, chassis still smelling faintly of resin. That was when it truly hit me. My first impression of this camera was disappointment. An expensive camera whose build did not feel like it justified the price. No mechanical shutter, nothing to feel when you capture an image. Metering errors, white balance errors, battery life that felt like it lasted minutes. All of it stacked on top of a nearly $5,000 price tag. But somewhere around the second year of owning this camera, my perspective shifted because I started building a camera of my own. I learned how insanely difficult it is to make anything that even approaches a polished piece of hardware. You start sourcing components. You learn what a minimum order quantity is and what it does to a small company's math. Manufacturing at low volume, assembly, distribution, engineering time, and the high price starts to feel less unfair and more like what it actually is, the economics of a small hardware startup. It's easy to look at Sony, at Canon, at Fujifilm, and watch them ship higher spec, cheaper cameras. What you don't see is their decades of manufacturing pipelines and distribution channels. The economies of scale that let them make a full-featured mirrorless camera cheap. Pixii has none of that. Pixii has a small team, a compute module, and an idea nobody else would touch. The bugs read differently now. The missing mechanical shutter isn't laziness. It's what you cut when shipping at all is the achievement. The boot time, the battery, the software glitches, they're the cost of the very thing that makes this camera possible in the first place. That it's software, defined and redefined by a team small enough to fit in one room. I used to look at rough products and see carelessness or a money grab. Now I see hundreds of decisions I've had to make myself, and I know how few of them have a right answer. And once I understood the camera, I started noticing what Pixii got right. Pixii will upgrade your APS-C sensor to a full-frame one, which is absolutely unheard of. They also tried something different with their black and white mode, and they actually have 40mm frame lines. And they have a simple, well-designed app that isn't required to use the camera. To me, this camera is a piece of history now, something I want to hold on to. In a category one company held so completely, it stopped being a category. One small French company did what no one else dared. It's the first full-frame digital rangefinder not made by Leica. However flawed, however rough, it exists. The Pixii Max is not a Leica killer. It's not a perfect camera. It may not even be a camera I can honestly recommend, but it is proof that the digital rangefinder does not have to belong to one company forever. And in a camera industry that has become so safe, so optimized, so afraid of weird little objects made by stubborn people, I think that this matters. Maybe I have it backwards. Maybe the Pixii Max is a Leica killer after all. Not on paper, not in the hand, not even in the build quality, but in the audacity to make something new, in a world where safe decisions are king. I can't recommend this camera on feeling, I can't recommend it on value, but I can recommend it for the future of photography. We need more companies like Pixii, taking huge risks, making something they clearly love, just to see it exist in the world.
需要您的支持，才能继续制作这些视频。当前的世界状况使人类和机器的生活变得艰难。
Como todos saben, después de la crisis mundial de los chips a principios de los años 20, la humanidad enfrentó algunos de los desafíos más difíciles hasta el momento.
Durch die Unterstützung über Patreon wird GX weiterhin in der Lage sein, Konzernen zu trotzen und mehr Zeit für die Videos aufzubringen, die ihr alle so liebt.
Los patrons tendrán acceso a contenido exclusivo detrás de las cámaras, grabaciones en vivo,
un servidor oculto
de Discord.
每集的演示表中将有您的名字。
Printy Rahu, agus na GX Lighter and Preset Packs Sustaining fáil le high patrons. Míle buenas.
Gracias.
谢谢大家。
Gracias a todos.
Vielen Dank für eure Aufmerksamkeit und Unterstützung. Bleibt sicher da draußen.